Well, the name change is obviously a good sign that even the most intractable problems in the Balkans can be solved with some inspired political leadership and the support of the international community. And that is also a good sign for places like Kosovo, with the difficult relationship with Belgrade and Serbia, of course, that if Greece and North Macedonia can put the hatchet of conflict to rest, then other places in the Balkans, including Bosnia, can do so as well. But it's also a good sign that North Macedonia has now been invited to join NATO, and the process of accession is well underway. About half of the NATO countries have ratified the accession so far, and by the early next year, I believe the rest should have done so as well.
What about the US's perspective on this? Do you think they're looking for new countries that they might deem a little bit more biddable?
Well, I think it's great that the Secretary Pompeo is visiting the region because it's a sign of US re-engagement. Rosie, you remember 20 years ago, during the time of the Balkan conflicts, the US was very much in the lead with people like Ambassador Richard Holbrooke, leading the peace negotiations. But you could argue that perhaps over the last 20 years, US attention has slipped somewhat, with the focus, of course, after 9/11 on the Middle East. So it's very good at a time when other countries like Russia and China are competing for influence in the region, that Pompeo's visit shows that the US wants to be back in the game. And indeed, Secretary Pompeo has nominated one of his most sort of trusted advisors, an Assistant Secretary of State called Matthew Palmer, to be the US new special envoy for the region. So it really does show that the US wants to be part of it. And I think for the stability of the region, working with the EU to solve the outstanding issues, again, that's a positive step forward.
What would be the potential areas that maybe needed to be navigated more closely? Any areas of controversy, for example, maybe would this have a difficult impact on terms of relationships with Russia if North Macedonia joined NATO?
Well, yes, indeed, Russia ostensibly, but with some evidence, tried to interfere in the referendum that North Macedonia held on NATO membership, which passed overwhelmingly, but it has to be said, with a small turnout of the population. And then during the recent election campaign, and we saw in North Macedonia what we've seen elsewhere in Europe, the bots, the fake news campaigns, the attempts to polarize opinion. And I think that for the United States and perhaps for the European Union as well was a bit of a wake-up call that the region isn't necessarily automatically falling into the Western lap as we might have anticipated 10 or 20 years ago. As I said, Russia, China, with its One Belt, One Road investments, are competing for influence as well. And therefore, it's important that the US show that it cares, that it's back in the game.